Kia ora whanau. Welcome to episode 1 of HAMBASSADORS. What's HAMBASSADORS, Shay?
Well, we did a Q&A at about episode 15 when we ran out of guests, and we are regenerating the idea but adding a little bit more to it. It's getting our community to ask us questions, for us to reflect on episodes, really just to expand the Between Two Beers universe.
Yeah, that Q&A was about 120 episodes ago, wasn't it? But I feel like we're overdue. Need to answer some questions. It's going to evolve over time. To start with, it's Q&A today, but we're gonna take this some places.
Yeah, it's an extension of that HAMBASSADORS concept, and a reminder: you don't have to live in Hamilton to be part of the HAMBASSADORS movement.
You can hate Hamilton.
You can hate Hamilton. It's a movement, though. You just can't. I've been saying you can't shit on Hamilton.
It's just our name. You have to like us. You have to like us to be a ambassador.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's get into HAMBASSADORS episode 1.
All right. So, let's rattle them through. Had some good uptake on the social media posts. So let's start with friend of the show, Paddy Gowers, written in. He said, how did you guys first meet?
Hamilton Boys High School. We, as people know, are unashamedly HAMBASSADORS. We both were at Hamilton Boys, both played football. I'm a few years older than Stephen. I was a captain of the first 11, and Stephen came into the side as a year 10, but we were also in the same tutor class, so every morning we would have registration at Boys High, and we've been friends ever since. Is that fair?
Yeah,
is that your recollection of it?
Andrew Tucker tutor class, TU. I remember you went to a World Cup. I can't remember what job it was with OFC, and you used to write like daily updates, and I'd have little like motivational quotes at the end. And for some reason, I don't know, I must have been 15, 16. That struck with me. Oh, this guy.
How old were you in 2006?
I was that older.
You were not,
I don't know.
you were not 15 or 16.
My timelines are mixed up.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a nice thing I was saying about you.
Well, yeah, thank you. I used to write to you directly, I believe, whopping1 at hotmail.com. I would send little motivational quotes to Stephen in his US college journey.
Yeah.
Just continuing the mentorship that I provided to you at Hamilton Boys.
You did, yeah. So football and school is how we met.
Yeah, we worked together as well
And
after that.
together, yeah.
At Oceania Football.
Shay was head of competitions. I was the media officer under Gordon and Glenn Watson.
That's right.
And now we're podcasters.
Yeah. And friends. That's right, isn't it? I forgot what we were doing. I forgot completely what we were doing. George Berry has asked, can you take us behind the scenes and share some of the stories of how you get some of your guests across the line?
Yeah, good question, George. The one that springs to mind is Lance Cairns and Chris Cairns. So we got Lance Cairns over the line because he happens to live with an old friend of ours who we used to play football with in Gisborne. Lance lives out the back of his house, and he's
I think you can say Ryan Mastrovich. I think you can say Ryan Mastrovich's name.
And he sort of said, hey, would you guys consider having Lance Cairns on the podcast? And we're like, he can't really hear though, can he? Isn't he deaf? And he's like, no, he can hear. He can talk. So we're like, hell yeah. So organised a flight down, probably one of the highlights of the journey for me, spending an afternoon with Lance. We watched, I think the Women's World Cup was on at the time, spent the afternoon there having a few beers. 90 minutes of him just telling the most incredible stories from his career that he wasn't able to tell. But it went really well, and as a result, Ryan was also in contact with Chris Cairns, and he said, look, Chris might actually be keen to come and tell his story too. We're like, holy shit, all right.
That would be a scoop, by the way, Chris Cairns.
That would be a big one. And then got in contact with Chris as like a WhatsApp number, and he seemed open to it, but he was going in for some surgery. He's like, push it back a few months. And so, yeah, it just happened. He said, yep, keen as, did a video call, and that was kind of, there was a few episodes which really spiked our audience. That was probably the first one, front page of the Herald, his first interview in about 10 years, where we talked about the match-fixing allegations and his health battle, and yeah, it sort of put us on the map.
Can I just jump in a little factoid for Between Two Beers listeners? That episode we did do by video link here in the Export Beer Garden studio. We could see Chris Cairns in Australia, but a former producer, who I won't name, wasn't able to patch our video through to Chris. So Chris could just hear two voices on the other end, whereas we could see him. So the fact that we were able to I think, get some of that stuff through when he was flying literally blind.
Oh, I was gutted about that.
Yeah, well, we couldn't. There's no video that exists.
No video, and for such an exclusive big interview, those clips of him, because he spoke with real emotion, like that would have been amazing. But anyway, not to be. Other ones, behind the scenes story. Mark Ellis, we get asked about Mark Ellis a lot. So I think we first emailed him over a year before he came on. The first email was like, oh, it was in about June. He's like, oh, I've got a bit on for the rest of the year, but try again in early 2023. Like, okay, he's just sort of fobbing us off. And then I messaged again, didn't hear back from him for ages. And then an email popped up. And by that point, I'd forgotten who, just an email popped up in Gmail and it was from Mark. It didn't say Mark Ellis. He's like, ready when you are, fellas. And I was really, Shay, holy shit, Mark Ellis is keen to come on. But I think after talking to him, he's in this sort of community where he has friends around him that listen to the pod. And I think they brought it into his consciousness that these guys are doing a good job. You should go and tell your story. So that one was really cool. Paul Henry was an interesting one because he's a guy who was very reluctant. I know he's done a few since, but super reluctant to do media interviews. And a few interviews he'd said he hated doing it, but we knew his son-in-law, and so messaged him, and he said, look, he's actually got this line of gin he's wanting to promote. If you're happy for him to drink his gin and talk about his gin, he'll come and chat with you. I was like, hell yeah, man, let's go. And there was one, Adesanya. We've tried to get him. A friend of the show randomly sent us about 5 phone numbers with probably the most high-profile people in New Zealand sport. He's like, guys, you should get these guys on. I was like, all right. So I texted the Adesanya number, and he came back, and he's like, hey, sounds like a cool time, but I'm not really doing podcast at the moment. I was like, all good, man. Had to shoot my shot. And then he replied, how'd you get this number, by the way? I was like, oh, man, some random punter just emailed me it on Twitter, messaged me in on Twitter. I won't share it with you. I won't show anyone, and I won't share it with anyone. So,
and he's stood true to his word, is he? If you're listening, he's not shared that number. There was another number on there, which is now All Blacks coach Scott Robertson, and I think he said, I only do one podcast a year, and I've done my one. And I was badgering Stephen to be like, well, fuck, 1 minute past midnight on 2023, you've got to send him a text to ask him if he'll come on. I don't know whether you sent that text or not.
I did on January 1st. I sent him a message, and it was too soon. No one's replying to messages on January 1st. And then you've got to wait a few months out. You can't follow up with a message soon after that. But he did reply to that initial message, and it had a little razor emoji. He signed off with a razor emoji, which I really
Which
liked.
we do. If there are people out there listening and they do genuinely think that there's a good guest or someone we could speak to, we're always open to suggestions, so keep those coming through.
Yeah. Right, question from Kyle Wisniewski. He says, who were you most nervous about interviewing?
Probably most recently, I can think of our episode with sexologist Morgan Penn. We drove up. We don't often drive up together for episodes, but for that one, we did drive up together, and there was definitely a sense of nervousness in the car on the drive up because we'd both done research, as we do for every episode, but we'd also sort of realised that Morgan's style is that she'll put whoever's asking her the questions back under the pump. So both Stephen and I were sort of like, how far are we going to go with sharing our sexual journeys with our audience? Are they really going to want to listen to us talking about it? Because she'd been on with Simon Bridges.
Yeah.
And the thought of Simon Bridges getting down to it with his wife filled me with dread. I'm not sure, I don't want to speak on your behalf, but it wasn't a pretty picture.
I remember on Twitter seeing someone comment, like, the last thing anyone wants to hear is Simon Bridges talking about sex. It's like, oh, people going to think that same thing about us.
Yeah, so that one, there was a little bit of unease about that, and I think on the drive home, there was probably a little bit of reflection on how that went. Just while we're talking, I think you did an amazing job, Stephen, of dodging the do you self-pleasure question. Anyone who's listened to that, go back and listen again when Morgan asked Stephen directly, what do you do in those situations? And you do a great job of just sort of talking right around the subject.
Well, that was the discussion on the drive up, wasn't it? I was like, I know she's going to ask me how many times she uses the term self-pleasure. It's like, I'm not prepared to answer that to sort of 20,000 people.
You don't want to put the exact numbers on it in any situation.
Yeah, so that was a pre-planned pivot. But yeah, the car ride up was a little bit nervous, a little bit of anxiety. And the car ride back, I remember you being like, hey, you gonna tell Bon about that? She might want a heads up of what's coming down the line. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't think it was that bad. He's like, no, it's not bad. It's good. It's just,
There's some
communication, bro.
Yeah. that was for me. That was one that there was a bit of trepidation, not only after we recorded, but also how it was going to be received. And for the most part, it's been received really well. Like, commended on being open and vulnerable and sharing kind of uncomfortable topics, or seemingly uncomfortable. Which again, to talk to communication is a critical one. But have you got anyone that you were kind of nervous around meeting or encountering?
Yeah, two that spring to mind are Susan Devoy and Miyamoto. Susan Devoy, I had a picture
Dame
of
Susan
her,
Devoy.
Dame Susan.
Dame, you're really bad at.
Oh, mate.
That's the second time. Apologies, Dame Lisa Carrington again.
I had a perception of her of being a real stern, serious, doesn't suffer fools lightly type character. And so want to do a really good job. But then we had the story in our locker of her pissing in a trophy. And I was like, fuck, like that goes against everything I think of Susan Devoy. But if we could get her to tell that story, I feel like it would be a real icebreaker to start with, and it would be amazing content. And she did, and she lived up to it. Like,
That was one of the all-time great segues from me, if I remember right.
oh yeah,
Pissing in.
if you don't mind tooting your own.
I've got no issues with tooting my own horn. Carry on. Sorry, I didn't interrupt you. I just wanted to pat myself on the back.
Yeah, so that one, she really softened, and I think it spoke to the research we did. We went to her family and her husband and her sons and things, and by showing her how much work we'd put into it, and then sort of teasing in a sort of scandalous story, she was more open to sharing it. So that one went really well. The other one was Miyamoto, which is one of my favourite episodes, I think. We knew her horrific history of domestic violence, and we were really cautious and careful about how to approach it. We didn't want it to be all about that. We wanted to have it as part of her picture, but not to define her. So we made a real effort of painting a picture of how, how happy her life was in her childhood and being out in nature and before we got to it. And I think it sort of hit the tone right again, where she saw we weren't going for a gotcha, we weren't going for a grab. We really genuinely wanted to hear the whole story. And the response to that one was really strong and really powerful. And watching her fight and win a world title the same week that we recorded with her was really cool. But yeah, I do remember being a bit anxious in the waiting room. We were out, do you remember? Out in the little glass booth out there, and she came in, and I think I had some advice that if she likes you, she's going to open up. But if she doesn't, or if she feels like the energy's off, then she might not. And obviously that was a big part of that episode, so I wanted it to go well. And yeah,
What's a big part of what we do is really thinking through how an episode looks or how an episode is going to go, which hopefully comes through to listeners. The next question actually is a little bit off podcast directly. It comes from Liam Hayes. What's up with the 4 kids thing? Are you done? And what does your day-to-day look like? I don't think Liam's the only one who's wondering about how this works. I've said this a number. 4 is a lot.
Yeah,
4 kids is a lot.
It is a lot of kids. We said we were done at 3, and then we both changed mine. We did plan on having the 4th. It's only a few days in, so it's not too different, but it is chaotic. There is chaos. Bond did 2 nights in birth care and then brought Goldie home, and there's a real sort of fear for her life in these early stages because all the kids want to cuddle, but they're 2, 4, and 6. So every time they have Goldie on them, you need to keep eyes on like a hawk, because the oldest will try and stand up on the couch while he's holding her and bring her across to you, and those are, that could end a life. There's a lot going on. Yeah, it's beautiful chaos. It's sort of short-term pain, long-term gain. We know it's going to be quite challenging over the next year, but love the idea of the big family. And yeah, you look like you've got something to say.
I remember when you told us that you were having 4, and I remember leaving the dinner thinking, that's surely a joke.
Oh, yeah, look, I get it. I remember when one of my friends told me that she was pregnant with her 4th kid. I think we had 1 kid at the time. And I was like, that's crazy. What's she doing? Oh, they're one of those families. Like, that is just nuts. There's actually something wrong with them. And I don't think it's until you've got 3 kids yourself you can even think about 4. Like I know what people are thinking. I know what people see and their expression when we posted that. For a lot of people, they wouldn't have known.
That was really nice, by the way. That was really nice to share that photo of the family.
But I know what people's perception of that picture is. It's like, fucking hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
It's a lot. So yeah, I don't expect anyone to understand. I don't even expect friends to know all their names, because my friend with 4 kids, I don't know the youngest. I keep forgetting the youngest.
Well, they all end in E. Bonnie, Bowie,
keep going,
Teddy,
and
Billy, and Goldie.
There you go. Yeah, twice.
Also, just before we leave that subject real quickly, hunt for a people mover or a vehicle. How's that going? If there's anyone out there listening that maybe is selling a 5 or a 7-seater, get in touch with Stephen.
We actually don't have a vehicle that can get all of our family from one place to another at the moment. We're also looking for a new house. If you're looking to sell a house in Hamilton, we need a bigger place.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that need doing. But yeah, I think I've made peace with the fact that we need a sliding door. Looking at a Kia Carnival is the vehicle.
They've gone out of business, I think, Kia.
I was looking at a Kia Carnival. Oh,
maybe. I mean, they physically exist. I don't think they're making any new ones, so you might get a good deal on that.
Yeah. Shout us a line if you've got eyes on a good vehicle. Right, I have a question from Ben Graham. Can we hear Seamus's cheeseburger eating competition story?
Ah, great. Haven't heard that enough.
Shut that down.
Well, no? As regular listeners might... No.
I think that one is... I don't think that comes up again.
I think they just come up naturally. Very naturally it comes up, that story. If you listen to any Kiwi Olympian, you'll hear that story. So go back and listen to DJ Forbes or Eliza McCartney or Ryan Nelson or anyone like that. All right, if you're going to skip over that question, then I will go to Sean Goldsbury, who's asked us, I'd love to hear your reflections on Izzy Whitley. What you learned, what surprised you, your general impressions, insights on him, and what made him so successful. Sounds like someone's looking for a blueprint for success.
Izzy Whitley, man, we had the radio awards the night after that episode, and so it was the first time that me and producer Adam and Shay all really hung out socially, and we had a few beers, and I remember just keeping reflecting on it, like, wow, man, that was a powerful episode. Like that kid is built different, and we all had little private conversations thinking, like, that was nuts. The mindset, the intensity, the drive and the hustle and the way he was able to articulate himself. And at 28, to have this behind him, these two $30 million businesses, a lot of people that speak like that, you think, yeah, it's all sort of shit. But he's sort of lived the life, and he's proof of what he preaches. We did get some feedback from someone on Insta saying, I think it's a little bit dangerous, the messaging around not needing that much sleep, because he had 2 heart attacks when he was 21, and that is a result, which she was saying was a result of stress, and lack of sleep is the biggest indicator of stress. You need to be really careful with that messaging, which I think is probably quite a good point, and one we potentially could have tracked with him. It's like, is that sustainable? Is that mindset sustainable? Is that sort of lifestyle sustainable long term? I think it is, because of how much exercise he does and how he looks after himself now.
Well, that was the message, wasn't it? It was to push the physical element of what he does to keep himself healthy and in check as well.
Yeah. But super inspiring guy. And it's kind of the direction that I think we might go with the podcast, is that he was a guy that no one would have known his name.
Well, that's good, because that was one of the questions, is what's the long-term plans for Between Two Beers? So you may as well roll straight into that.
Yeah, and we put a message out a while ago saying for the everyman stories. Now, Izzy's not an everyman, like his story is epic, but he's a guy with lower profile with a incredible yarn to tell. And they need to be unicorns. They need to be of that level story, because we've had a ton of people messaging saying they know someone or they want to come on themselves. But I think it's really cool having this platform to...
That's a cheat if you can put yourself forward, isn't it? Someone else has got to nominate
you almost rule
yourself out.
If you can't nominate yourself.
Yeah.
But
start a burner account, then put yourself forward.
Perhaps a blueprint of where we want to go.
What were your reflections from that episode?
Yeah, like I said, I just came away feeling energized. He was a guy who came into the room and he had such positive, upbeat energy. I can see why people would want to work for him. I can see how he can lead teams, because He's just got a can-do attitude. You can tell he doesn't suffer fools. You can tell that he's quite sort of cutthroat in his ways, but it's also energizing. So I don't know. I like surrounding myself with people like that, with really good vibes. Was I surprised? I was surprised by the whole thing, to be honest. I kind of knew his story, but just I keep saying the energy, the aura he gave off was awesome. Yeah, go check it out if you haven't listened to it yet. Okay, last question for this one. Headley Edwards has written in. What does the media award you guys won actually mean?
I'm going to throw that back at you because it's not my area of expertise. The
awards,
the NZ Herald Voyager Media Awards.
Yeah, so we won the Voyager Award for Best Episodic Podcast. So there's 2 awards at those media awards, episodic and seasonal. Ours obviously goes out every week, so it's episodic. And we were up against Radio New Zealand's The Detail, which is a fantastic pod. It's a daily. There's a big team of people working on it. It's this big operation, and to even be in the final with those guys was quite cool. And then to be a joint winner, I don't think I really appreciate it. Maybe only hit me, I don't know, about a week afterwards, what it actually meant and how far we'd come and all that sort of stuff. So it was really cool. It was really cool to be acknowledged. Like, it was a huge night. It was black tie. I was wearing a bow tie, and there's about 60 plus tables, and Petra was emceeing. So to see a lot of people in that room that had so much love for the podcast was a really cool moment. Sad Shay was overseas commentating in Vanuatu, so he couldn't share it with me. But that's what that meant. And the future of the pod, well, this is part of it. It's to create more. Ideally, I mean, we've made no secrets that we would love to do this full time. I see an avenue, I see a path to that. The uptake in audience this year has been mind-blowing, and the commercial side is really backing in. There's good sponsors coming on board.
There's always room for more, though, as well. If you're interested, just drop us a line.
Always room for more. We're making a real push to develop and build community. If you haven't already, please go and join our HAMBASSADORS Facebook page. You don't need to be from Hamilton. You don't need to like Hamilton. You need to like us.
You kind of need to like Hamilton a little bit. Just
so.
Well, don't shit on it. Just don't shit on it.
Just don't
you
shit
you
on
can
it.
be
You don't have to
ambivalent
like
towards
it.
Hamilton.
Yeah, you don't have to like Hamilton. But that's part of it. It's building community. We want to do live events. There's a bunch of Q&As and nights we're emceeing coming up, but we want to do our own one later in the year. Watch this space. And just evolve this thing. Just keep it growing and keep building. I don't know where it will go to, but opportunities really cool opportunities keep popping up. Shay just emceed. You commentated on the All Whites game against Sweden in the morning.
Yeah, thankful I did that one and not the one against Qatar.
Yeah. But that's the sort of thing. These things, I don't know. The journey is really cool. I keep saying that all the time, but just enjoying the ride at the moment, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. And this is the first of what we hope to be a few of these. So keep the feedback coming. You don't have to wait for us to call for it. You can always flick us a note, a message, good, bad, and different. It's great to hear what people are thinking, because that helps us grow and it helps us provide the best content that we possibly can.
Nice, man. Is that us?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we're done.
Shout out producer Adam.
Shout out, Eds. Love your work. See you next time.
Enjoy.